The Misadventures of Professor Quibblebottom. Once upon a time in the whimsical town of Waffleville, lived a peculiar and slightly eccentric professor named Ebenezer Quibblebottom. With his wild mop of curly hair and mismatched socks, he was known for his absent-mindedness and knack for finding himself in the most hilarious situations. One sunny morning, Professor Quibblebottom set out on an expedition to discover the legendary treasure hidden deep within the treacherous Snickerdoodle caves. Armed with a worn-out map and an insatiable curiosity, he eagerly embarked on his quest. As he ventured into the dark, damp tunnels of the cave, Professor Quibblebottom soon realized he had forgotten his trusty flashlight. Undeterred, he decided to explore blindly, hands outstretched, hoping to stumble upon the treasure by chance. Little did he know that the Snickerdoodle caves were also home to a mischievous group of sprites. These little creatures delighted in playing pranks on unsuspecting explorers, and they found Professor Quibblebottom's bumbling antics particularly amusing. As the professor meandered deeper into the cave, he encountered numerous amusing obstacles. He tripped over stalagmites, mistook bats for friendly birds, and even stumbled into a hidden underground river. Much to his surprise, the river turned out to be made entirely of maple syrup. Covered in sticky goo, the professor continued his journey, taking occasional breaks to lick his fingers for sustenance. Unbeknownst to him, the sprites closely followed his every move, snickering and giggling at his predicament. After what seemed like an eternity, Professor Quibblebottom finally stumbled upon the legendary treasure room. To his delight, he discovered a chest overflowing with golden pancakes, chocolate coins, and jelly-filled donuts. Rejoicing in his find, the professor reached out to grab a pancake, only to have it transform into a giant, pancake-flinging catapult. Before he could react, he was propelled through the air, pancakes flying around him like frisbees. The sprites, now unable to contain their laughter, erupted into fits of giggles as the professor soared through the cave, attempting to catch pancakes mid-air while dodging others. It was a sight to behold. Eventually, Professor Quibblebottom managed to land safely, covered head to toe in pancake batter and syrup. Although he never did find the treasure he sought, he gained something far more valuable, a heart full of laughter and memories to last a lifetime. Returning to Waffleville as a local legend, Professor Quibblebottom became a beloved figure, entertaining townsfolk with his tales of the Snickerdoodle caves and his mischievous encounters with the sprites. His expeditions may not have always gone as planned, but the joy he brought to others was priceless. And so, the legend of the quirky professor and his misadventures lived on, reminding everyone that life is best enjoyed with a hearty laugh and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. The hilarious hijinks of Professor Pumpernickel. Once upon a time in the whimsical town of Maryville, there lived a renowned scientist named Professor Pumpernickel. With his wild hair, colorful lab coat, and knack for creating wacky inventions, the professor was loved by all the townspeople. One sunny day, as he was strolling through the town square, the professor stumbled upon a peculiar object lying on the ground, a pair of neon green goggles that shimmered in the sunlight. Curiosity piqued, Professor Pumpernickel decided to put on the goggles, unaware of the magical powers they possessed. As soon as he placed them over his eyes, everything around him transformed into a world of utter silliness. People were walking upside down, cats were meowing words instead of their usual meows, and trees danced to an imaginary tune. At first, the professor was bewildered but soon found himself chuckling at the amusing sight before him. He couldn't resist sharing the hilarity with the townspeople, who were equally astounded by the comical chaos caused by the goggles. Laughter filled the air, and Maryville became even merrier than ever. Word spread throughout the nearby villages about the professor's fantastical goggles. Soon, people from far and wide traveled to Maryville, eager to experience a world transformed by laughter. Visitors would rent the goggles from Professor Pumpernickel's lab, ensuring countless hours of uncontrollable giggles and guffaws. One fateful day, a mischievous elderly lady named Granny Gigglesworth paid a visit to the professor's lab. She had heard so much about the goggles and couldn't wait to see what all the fuss was about. But little did she know that her big, boisterous laugh was about to take the hilarity to another level. As Granny Gigglesworth put on the goggles, her laughter echoed through the town. People crowded around to witness the madness that ensued. The once stationary lampposts started tap dancing, the fish in the nearby pond took up synchronized swimming, and even the clouds shaped themselves into amusing caricatures of famous celebrities. The town square transformed into a carnival of laughter, with children rolling on the ground, clutching their stomachs, and adults unable to contain their glee. The joyous chaos continued for days on end, with the townspeople dancing, singing, and sharing jokes until their cheeks ached from laughing too much. But eventually, the professor realized that he needed to find a way to bring the silliness to an end. He knew that constantly wearing the goggles might have unforeseen consequences. So, with a heavy heart, he concocted a potion that, when administered to Granny Gigglesworth, would reverse the magic of the goggles. When Granny Gigglesworth finally removed the goggles, the town slowly returned to its normal state. The lampposts ceased their dance, the fish swam lazily in the pond, and the clouds regained their fluffy shapes. Although the townspeople missed the infectious laughter, they understood that laughter was best experienced in moderation. Professor Pumpernickel remained a beloved figure in Maryville, thanks to his inventive spirit and contagious sense of humor. People fondly remembered the days of mirth and merriment, forever grateful for the laughter that had brought them all together. And so, the people of Maryville continued to spread joy and laughter, knowing that life was always better with a little bit of silliness added to it. The Misadventures of Professor Pumpernickel. Once upon a time, in the bustling town of Whimsyville, there lived a peculiar and eccentric professor named Albert Pumpernickel. With his wild white hair, round spectacles perched on his nose, and a passion for inventing bizarre contraptions, Professor Pumpernickel had become a legend in the town. His creations were known to bring laughter, wonder, and sometimes chaos to the lives of all who encountered them. One sunny morning, Professor Pumpernickel woke up with a twinkle in his eye and a gleeful grin on his face. He had just thought of his most audacious invention yet, a machine that could transform vegetables into talking animals. He imagined the joy it would bring to children around the world. Without wasting any time, the professor hurried to his laboratory and began gathering all the necessary materials. He retrieved a carrot, a cabbage, and a beetroot from his garden and placed them in his peculiar-looking device, aptly named the Veggie Metamorphosis Contraption. With a flick of a switch, the machine whirred to life, emitting a series of strange noises. First, the carrot transformed into a chatty parrot, flying around the room and squawking up a storm. Next, the cabbage turned into a bumbling rabbit, hopping around clumsily and munching on Professor Pumpernickel's prized books. Finally, the beetroot morphed into a mischievous monkey, swinging from the chandelier and making a mess of the professor's carefully organized lab equipment. Chaos ensued as the parrot squawked profanities. The rabbit hopped onto neighbors' lawns, and the monkey went on a rampage, flinging test tubes and beakers in every direction. Poor Professor Pumpernickel quickly realized that his brilliant invention was not as well thought out as he had originally believed. With a determined look on his face and a broom in hand, the professor set out to retrieve the escaped animals. He chased the parrot through Whimsyville's market, apologizing profusely to anyone who had been startled by its colorful vocabulary. The rabbit was finally caught after an intense chase, having left a trail of nibbled carrots and toppled flower pots in its wake. The monkey, however, proved the most elusive, leading Professor Pumpernickel on a wild pursuit through the town's rooftops and tree branches. After what felt like hours, the professor managed to coax the monkey down from a towering oak tree using a bunch of ripe bananas. Exhausted but triumphant, he led the mischievous trio back to his laboratory, grateful that no serious harm had befallen them or Whimsyville. With newfound wisdom, Professor Pumpernickel realized the importance of thoroughly testing his inventions before setting them loose upon the world. He made amends for the commotion caused by his Veggie Metamorphosis Contraption, promising his neighbors and friends that he would be more cautious in the future. And so, the town of Whimsyville forgave the good-natured, absent-minded professor, valuing his contributions to their lives, no matter how chaotic they may sometimes be. From that day forward, Professor Pumpernickel continued his inventing endeavors, but always took the time to double-check and, of course, make sure there were no vegetables nearby. The end.